business on it, and we'll back you up.
This might be a little off point, and we can wait on it if you like, but you put 1 million documents into Watson that have been published in different publications by different authors, and they have different copyrights on them, if any, and that sort of thing. The end result is clearly what you're showing. Who owns that?
So the question was, I'll try to repeat the question just because there's a camera.
Rights question. What happens?
Yeah, so what do you do with the intellectual property rights on the content that is ingested into Watson?
Yeah.
So there's two. The most important thing to know is that, for example, with the Watson Q&A service, remember I said that Watson's lots of stuff, and here's 7 things that Watson is that you can use as Lego. So think of Watson as a movement, a chorus of Lego pieces. And so one Lego piece is the Q&A API. And that particular Lego piece is the one people most typically associate with the idea of Jeopardy and what we've learned from the media. So let me use that as an example. So you would ingest that into your own instance. You own the information. You better actually have rights to yourself, right? So that's one of the things in the contract is don't put anything in here you don't have rights to, right? Don't get us all in trouble. But if it's your stuff, it's your stuff. We're not that interested. You know, IBM, that's not our business model. It's your stuff. So we don't own anything. We do own improvements to the algorithms that we make in the process of helping our partners build stuff. So as we improve our systems, we of course own that. But we do not own the content, you do. We do not own the solutions, you do.
So if there's content that would contaminate our content by being present, how would we defend against that?
You would, so in the case of QA, for example, again, I try to be careful to talk about specific subsystems because they're all different. In the case of user modeling, it doesn't matter. It's a completely SaaS, you're putting some text in, you're getting some vectors out. It's simple. But with QA, it's fairly involved. It's a big system. And in that case, you have your own separate instance. There is no, a lot of people ask, is there some giant pool of data in the sky? And there are companies out there that are doing that sort of thing, so it's a logical question to ask. We don't do that right now with that system. It's your data, it's in your sandbox, it doesn't touch any other data. If you contaminate it, that's on you.
Sure.
But does that answer the question? Others?
Questions about the training that is involved to create that circle of emotions. So are you having people manually label beforehand some large training data? What does it mean to see literacy or attractiveness or love, all those different emotions?
Right. So how do you train it? So with system, we call it System U internally, but the user modeling system, that was trained by psychologists, based on so that particular one, it's a really nice little atomic service, right? You put in some text to get it out. It's based on standards. It's a fairly straightforward. It's not simple at all, but it's straightforward in its application, and the training is done. You don't have to bake any new training into it. In fact, you can't. It's just input-output machine, API, JSON. Q&A, lots and lots of training. So if you wanted to come and work on a QAPI and we wanted to give you an instance and make you a partner, we're going to take some time. It's going to be your data. We're going to want to get that ingested correctly. You're applying your expertise to it, and you're putting in what, Anthony? Or I think our latest thing, we like about 1,000 question answer pairs per instance, just to get going. So so every system is different. Your user modeling is kind of on the far left of simple and easy and inexpensive for us to run, and Q&A is more involved. It's not something you're just going to do in a day, but it is very extensive. Make sense? Less turnkey.
Do you have a system that confirm? How do you confirm the answer is correct? Do you have another file system?
I didn't catch all of it.
From the Q&A that says our data, you query anything, and we got an answer back. How do we confirm that it's the right answer?
So the question was, how do we know that it's funny, we spent like half the morning on what we're calling debugging for cognitive, right? You were on there? You were on there. It was a fun call. So yeah, how do you figure out if why is this answer coming back? Why is this content coming back to me? and visualizing the pathways for that. I'll just show you a piece of work. This is all inside Pool. So this is sort of a visualization that some of the guys in research worked up. And so, for example, this is how it, this is showing the kind of visualizing the UEMA pathways and how we're parsing out the content. We did this because sometimes it feels like Watson's bringing back a question, an answer that I might have found on a search engine, and that's because sometimes it's a fairly obvious answer, right? But what we wanted to do is show that there's depth here, that we're not mixing up subject and predicate, that we're figuring out not just what the words are, but which ones are the important salient words and how they relate to each other. We're doing all of that before we ask the question. And then, once we've done that, then we're generating evidence, and we can visualize the pathways, and we can say, well, so what is the C-shape, what is this one? C-shaped section of the small intestine. So the focus word is what, and section of the small intestine is the salient part, and in this case, duodenum was the answer. Oops. Kind of a visualization without interactivity. So this is a different question, and again, 77.4 confidence. Oops. And last time I did this, it worked fine. Okay, so yeah, here's the evidence for this one. Here's the evidence for this, and if I, so fluorescence, fluorescent minerals emit visible light when exposed to ultraviolet light. So it's doing a bunch of stuff, and so this is a kind of the start of a long journey where we actually build ways for our partners to debug what's going on inside the brain. And this is, I would say, of a journey of 1,000 steps, this is step number 1.
Follow-up question to the other gentleman regarding IP rights. So when you discovered those additional new kinase proteins,
Yep.
so who owns the IP right to that?
The discovery. Interesting. I don't know. The question is, who owns the right to the discovery that we found those 6 kinases? I think humanity, hopefully, is the right answer. Probably Baylor, which is good because they're a university, so back to humanity. But they're the ones that built the system with us, and so I think that the output of if say you're building a company and you build on top of Watson and you discover something, it's your discovery. It would be the same as saying, well, I used a microscope and discovered something. Well, it's not the microscope's thing, it's yours.
Yeah, for this discovery example, do you need any training?
Yeah, so discovery involved a lot of training of various types. Let me talk a little bit about training, and Anthony, if you want to jump in on this, feel free. I know you've been thinking a lot about training. The idea of training is sometimes, and this room probably wouldn't be, this isn't a problem for you guys because you get this stuff, but in a lot of rooms, especially with more of the CEOs of startups who don't have the machine learning background, they'll see like a training pair, a question and answer pair, and they'll say, well, aren't you just deterministically matching this question to this answer? And sometimes it feels that way. But what's really happening, as you know, is it's breaking apart the features of this question and the features of this answer or this set of answers, and then you can cluster the questions and answers, and it's generalizing the learnings from that and applying it to other questions and answers. So that's the kind of training that's going on there. Discovery had several kinds of training involved, both structured and unstructured. So and in Discovery's case, some unsupervised learning as well. So we're starting to get into unsupervised learning, and that's a different animal, right? Classifiers versus, right? So.
Just to kind of add to that previous question, are various systems out there like Open Calais, Top Quadrant, and so forth that use semantic analysis to analyze documents and so forth? And obviously, Watson does it better. So
so to summarize the question, what is it about Watson that is superior to known systems like random forest or top quadrant or what have you, right? I don't think you brought random forest or just blowing down the first principles like gradient descent or regression. Does everybody know, when I was in college, when I was in grad school, I had to use SPSS, and then I found out we bought it. So SPSS is in Watson now, which was hilarious and cool. And so I'm thinking, well, really, all that multiple regression, all that stuff is going on at different layers. The answer is that Watson's using all of that stuff. Remember I said like 350 subsystems are at play, arguing with each other. So that's that stuff. Or we're applying it to the language, right? Watson is definitely about big data, but in its wheelhouse in the beginning, in the Jeopardy phase, and in a lot of what I'm showing you here, you might call it big language, right? We call it deep NLP, not just NLP, but deep NLP. And so it's applying regression, it's applying statistical analyses to the language to understand the human language that's going on. And some of those algorithms are those, and others are more esoteric that we're not talking about. So it's the pylon effect, it's the rugby effect of all of it going on together and how it coordinates. The stuff that IBM's good at, right? Taking lots of systems and creating systems of interaction that work together in a harmonized way.
So are you using Hadoop and how?
Yeah, Hadoop's in there.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, it's deep, so it's one of many subsystems that work. Anthony, would you?
No, sounds great.
Really? You can embarrass me. You can
I have a question. Can I feed more specific knowledge to the Watson? So, for example, car maintenance manuals or something, some company-specific knowledge by, yeah.
So yes, so the question is, can you feed new information into Watson? Yes. The services that on bluemix.net, the current 7, and there are 50 more coming, over the next number of months. I just saw, I think 9 more that are on staging. So they're all kind of coming out, and of course I'm not going to tell you when, but they're coming. And so 50 more of these Lego pieces that you'll be able to. There's a little Lego man, there's little Legos, and you can use them all for different things. Some of them, it wouldn't make sense to add new. That's not what that particular Lego piece does. But others, yes, you would need to. So concept extraction, for example. Now, what we're doing with Bluemix and these services, is especially when they're in beta form, is we're saying, try it out, fool around, and then use that to come to us and let's talk about a partnership. So when you build something interesting with these piece parts, it's sort of allowing you to get specific about what you want to do and articulate for you. So instead of listening to me drone on about what it can and can't do, you can go find out for yourself, at least for those pieces. You'll also start to get an idea of what you can't do with those that you need the private instances for. And then you come and you say, hey John, I want to do a private instance, I want to do all this stuff. And as you know, this stuff it's not like AWS for cognitive computing. There is no such thing. Cognitive computing is expensive to run. So we're going to say, okay, we like that business. We want to be a full partner with you. We're going to give you an instance. You're going to run it. We're going to pay for it. We're going to invest in you. Because it doesn't cost us nothing to run it. Some systems are less expensive than others, but basically it's an all-you-can-eat model. You build what you need to build with all the subsystems that you need, and you pay us nothing. We make no money until you do. I've never seen us do this before, ever. So this is a great, weirdly,
but I think
I can't believe we did this model.
In enterprise use case, enterprise has very close knowledge. So some enterprise would like to add more company-specific knowledge to Watson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I imagine, yeah.
you know, Manoj Saxena was our first GM of Watson Division, and Mike Roden is our new one, and my boss, Steve Gold, all serial entrepreneurs, right? Manoj is a very famous now an investor, right? He's got the Entrepreneurs Fund, or the, oh gosh, I forgot the name of his fund. Huh? Yeah, well, yeah, Natisa. But he's got a new fund for this space. And Manoj is a very great entrepreneur. And so baked into the bones of Watson was, how do we make this thing relevant to entrepreneurs when it's not cheap to run? We said, okay, well, let's invest in entrepreneurs in two ways. One, we'll run the systems for you, and we won't charge you until, but we want there's a percentage of revenue at the end. We want to make a lot of money after you make a lot of money. So let's not fool around. We want to make a lot of money. But we'll wait for that until you're successful. And we consider all of the companies that we're doing that with as a portfolio, just like you would as a VC. But then on top of it, we created a VC fund. And we said, well, let's put $100 million into that fund. And companies that are partners that are doing this with us already are candidates for it. We've already invested into Fluid and Welltalk. We're about to launch their products. And we require we'll follow the lead in. So if a venture capitalist is funding you for your Series A or up, we'll follow them in, and often we'll help pitch it. I pitched a major VC 4 hours. They were in the room for 4 hours, and I pitched them one of our partners for 4 hours. And not for nothing, I think it mattered that I did it, because I was like, I love this. I want it, I love it. And it wasn't the CEO saying it was me. And I think that helped. You know? Because every CEO is in love with their thing. And so you see, so when we say we're going to partner with you, we don't mean just here's the API and we're going to call you a partner. We want all in. We want to be your full-on partner. We have a big team. Anthony's part of it. We're going to help with technical support, white glove. We're going co-marketing, sales. We've rigged our sales force at IBM so that if you're selling into the enterprise, they actually have a reason to push your stuff. We've never done that before, not well. I'm really impressed with this. So when we say partner, it's like, you know, this. Not everybody knows this analogy, but you're Dave and we're Busters, right? That's what we want to do.
John, are you confident that you can control that process? I
No.
ask this question with a good deal of affection for IBM as a company, because I've also been in and out. But they're notoriously tough to work with for small ventures. When corporate has a hand in it, it gets tough. And IBM's famous as well known for just being too big to handle.
Yeah.
What's your thumbprint going to look like?
I'm going to start. The question is, how is this going to work? How are we going to control it? How are we going to not be an awful partner for startups? And the answer is starting with Bluemix. So my buddy Damien Heredia, who runs Bluemix, is a startup guy. His boss is a startup guy. Half the people I know at IBM have started startups, at least one. And he is an animal about staying focused on the entrepreneur and on the developer and on the user in ways that I've never seen IBM do before. So it's a beautiful product, really. I love it. His boss, or his old boss, we acquired a company called Lombardi. And his boss, the guy that ran Lombardi is a guy named Phil Gilbert, pretty well-known design thinking guy. And now, today at IBM, we've hired, I think, close to 1,000 developers, or designers. You cannot start a product at IBM today without going through full-on design thinking. And it's staying hard focused on the user. And so when you play with Bluemix, it's credit card, it's click to accept license, it's pay as you go.
So the coupling can be fairly loose.
The coupling can be fairly loose, right? And then you can use Bluemix on that basis. As these things come into commercial availability, you can use them on a pay-as-you-go basis, loose coupling, until you have something that's really juicy, and then you want to get that going, and then you want to partner.
This is something of a new model as well, for small ventures to look at you that way.
Yeah, no, I think we're getting it, and not for nothing, the people that are running the show now we're coming up in the 90s, and we're saying, hey, why don't we get this? And now they can just say, we get this. So I think we're doing a pretty good job with that. And so now, sure, when you're becoming a partner, there's contracts and there's all that stuff. But we have a team that's local, that's in the valley, that will help a lot. And I think our record time was what? I mean, we did that one in 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Right.
And yeah, and 4 to 6 weeks, and then we got it to commercial agreement in under 90 days, I think. So they're out with a commercial agreement, being able to sell their product in that amount of time.
Because obviously, if we're gonna go out and look for a substantial round of investment funds, once we get through the first hurdle, proving it works and bringing it to your attention, we need to be able to talk to investors on the basis that essentially you're in our pocket. They're gonna stay there. That's what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, the revenue share model has its limits. For example, you know, it's hard to figure out how that would work in a nonprofit. But then we have the pay-as-you-go model on Bluemix. So there's ways around, and we're learning, right? This is early. So there are gaps in the kinds of companies that would be appropriate for us to work with. We've got over 120 companies in development, and I think we just passed 30 companies in commercial agreement, and those are all starting to put their products on the market. There was a C9, a Salesforce, runs a top Salesforce in predictive analytics. They just announced at Dreamforce. It's the first time we were on stage at Dreamforce in quite a while, so that was cool.
What other languages can Watson understand?
Languages. Eventually, all of them, we're working hard. Right now, English only, changing fast. Anything I tell you right now, today, give me 24 hours and half of it will change. I mean, we're moving that fast. So languages, we're moving. I think, I heard Mike Roden at our Astor New York City launch a month or so ago confirm that so I'm going to say it's safe for me to say that Brazilian Portuguese is coming out very soon. Most of the Romance languages, Chinese is really hard, but we're doing it. You know, so it'll all come eventually. We see this as a 50-year trend, another 50-year trend, right? You know, procedural computing, cognitive computing, 50 years. So we got 50 years to get them all.
You talk about, so in some cases there's 350 subsystems, they're all arguing. Can you talk about if there's any like domain awareness on how to organize the way to resolve that argument?
Right. Well, so Anthony, you want to talk at all about the pathways and the annotators and how they play together? You can think about that a lot.
Well, like John mentioned, we have.
I'll just stand close to you. Well, like John mentioned, we have about 350 annotators, and while they're not all exposed to you, they are configurable, and out of the box, like John was mentioning, the services that you get access to are somewhat hard-coded, meaning you can't change those annotators. But I think John will probably spend a little time maybe talking about the ecosystem, and he's kind of alluded to the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is the ability for you to become a partner, and we're starting to expose functionality so that you can tap into the pipeline, tap into the various Legos, as John's mentioning, and we'll slowly start allowing more configurability. And so slowly, as John is saying, you know, there are 50 Lego pieces that are coming out, and some of those are implementations of these configurable components. And so I would expect that eventually, I wouldn't say all of them will be configurable, but many of them will be able to be tweaked, and you'll be able to change the way that they're arguing amongst each other.
And this is something that, you know, you might have seen Michael Jordan. I wouldn't mind you commenting on this. So Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan of machine learning, right? That's the joke. from Berkeley, you know, he came out with some comments just the other day I can't, was it Giga OM? That he said, you know, the generalized machine learning as a service isn't really something, and I think we would sort of agree. That's why these 50 subsystems, these Lego pieces, they do a job. We can talk about what they do, what they don't do. They're specific. You know, that cognitive load of going, you know, is this the singularity? You know, forget about that. They're useful or they're not useful. We think these 50 things are useful. But with so when it comes to the annotators, they're when I say that they're running an argument, how does that argument resolve? You know, in QAPI in particular, for example.
So as John was mentioning, you know, Watson will ingest the information that you provided, and we put that into what we call a corpus, and the corpus is the body of knowledge for which Watson will extract information. And the way it extracts information is it reads the single sentence or multiple sentences that you provided. It'll use natural language processing, it processes those, and it starts sorting through the corpus, looking for answers. And the brilliant thing about it is it doesn't look for one answer. And John was showing up here, you see the confidence scores. And you'll see, so each one of those is a potential answer. So in this case, you can see that for the fluorescent molecule will shine when exposed to this. Watson has come up with probably 10 different potential answers. And what that is Watson will come up with answers, hypotheses, we call them hypotheses. So it goes through a hypothesis generation phase. And in the process of gathering these hypotheses, Watson extracts evidence from your corpus, from your body of evidence. And once it has, in this case, a list of 10 different potential answers, it exposes those answers to these different subunits. And each of the subunits will have different capabilities of understanding different types of questions and different types of content. And they'll all provide a ranked score of confidence in whether they think that question is right. And we aggregate those scores and come up with this confidence level. So right now John's mentioning we have 350 subsystems. I wouldn't be surprised if we'll end up with well over 1,000 or more pretty quickly.
So and also we were talking about that these are instances. So if your company's in medical science or life science, or if your company's in sales or insurance or some other area, my boss Steve Gold thinks that there's about 60% of companies in a vertical industry probably have the kind of content and to be relevant and find some use in Watson. So if I haven't said it before, right, the companies that are really interesting for us right now have content in the form of, in this case for now, English language sentences, lots of English language sentences. So if any of you have lots and lots of English language sentences, we should be talking. If you need English language sentences for your solution, well, we have a content store that's about to launch, which will have other people's content that you can consume either for free or for fee, and so you'll be able to do that. But the ones that really are in the central part of the wheelhouse right now are the companies that have content. That's why we're not playing Moneyball right now. I said that we're investing in Series A, not seed or pre-seed. And I really wanted to do seed and pre-seed. I made a great argument for it, and then I convinced myself it wasn't the right thing for us right now, because if you think about it, if you're in 500 startups, say, and you're a typical company, you can write code in 6 weeks. It used to be 10 weeks, but now it's 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks because of things like passes and Bluemix, right? You don't have to like install WebSphere for 3 weeks. Now you can write code in 6 weeks or whatever and have a company and maybe become Instagram or whatever. It's hard to accumulate content and expertise it takes at least 11 weeks for that. So seed level, or seed and pre-seed typically are less likely to be in that kind of state. Some might. If you have experience in content and you're in pre-seed, come talk to us. But Series A seems to be more typical for that. But so you get that instance, and why are we not pooling it all together across lots and lots of instances? Well, the reason is it gets messy. Machine learning isn't HAL 9000, right? It doesn't. You're training it when you. So the kind of hypervisor, metaphorically speaking, that's saying you're right, you're wrong in this 350 pathway argument, is going to be, it's going to make a different decision. It might be in medical, it's this pathway that tends to get it right more often. But in sales or in real estate or something, it's this pathway.
Right.
Fair statement?
Yeah.
So that's why it's not a generalized system. It's why we think that IBM is actually in a good position from like being useful. It's not about consumer universality. That's a cool thing we'd love to talk about. It gets the articles, but the real utility comes at the company level, saying I'm trying to solve a problem for these humans over here, and these other humans will solve it with this other thing.
Are the English sentences you processed for the Jeopardy project available to?
So Jeopardy used a lot of Wikipedia. So that, and
So
Wikipedia, I don't think I'm speaking out of school. I don't want to make any news tonight. I want to be useful, but I don't want to make any news. I think it's safe to say that, take a look at the content store coming out in the next few weeks. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said Watson thing started with Jeopardy, and you probably had like 20 subject areas or whatever, categories that you have. Now you have about 350 subjects.
No, so the question is, do we have about 20 subjects in Jeopardy?
That is not the question.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
So, when you first designed Watson, that was intended for Jeopardy, as you said. And in Jeopardy, there's a way to sort of limit the scope. They probably tell the contestants up front that there's going to be these 20 subjects or whatever.
No.
Okay, so how?
So we could not choose the subjects. It all had to be just like any other. We didn't know any of the questions in advance. We didn't know any of the subjects in advance.
So it could be from any topic from any.
In that particular case, on general knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, you started with some scaled model, and now you have about presumably 350 different subject areas like medicine and whatever else the other things are. If you can share, is there a strategy that IBM's looking at to say, we'll go in these areas but not these areas, and have a second strategy? Great
question. So the question is, a question of focus. I'll summarize.
Right.
What is our focus? So there's two answers. One is, anybody remember WebSphere?
Yes.
Anybody use it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. My first boss back at IBM, Jerry Cuomo, was one of the founders of WebSphere, and he's very proud of it. Put his kids through school on WebSphere. And but there's one thing I think that he would say about WebSphere is that in the early days we tried to be useful for everybody, for everything, and it became a pretty big monster of a thing. It was very useful, very sophisticated, but hard to work with. I think it's a fair comment, right? I hope he doesn't get mad at me for that. We tried to learn a lesson from that, and so you'll see we've really been doubling down on medical, life science. So we're really good at that. Watson's, I don't know. We joke that we're sending him to take the medical exam, and actually there's some truth to that. I think actually the truth is that he's failing, but pretty well and better than most, right? So I think the bar exam should be next. I think you'll over time you'll see wherever language is, Watson is. Wherever there's unstructured data, Watson will be. Wherever there's structured data that's combined with unstructured data to find to build learning systems that you teach and that they and learn rather than you program deterministically, you'll see Watson. But today, heavy on medical, getting into law. We got one or two companies in law in our portfolio of companies. Retail, sales, and some of it is opportunistic. If we find the right company and they can do something with their instance that's interesting, then that's the nice thing about being a portfolio company of entrepreneurs. We can, the whole idea was that we couldn't possibly figure out what to do with all this stuff on our own. So if you have something that's completely out there, but it's contained within your instance, go for it. So those are two answers. One is that we're focused on medical first. We're trying to be slow and methodical about that and not just go everything, everybody in terms of these big systems, but in terms of what you do with the Lego pieces, do what you want.
So the second quick question here was that you mentioned disambiguation in language itself can be a living thing. So over a period of time, even in medicine, like the jargon changes or meanings change.